Hi guys, Shawn here from digiDirect. So today we're going to be taking a look at the new Panasonic GX85. So depending on which continent you're from, this may also be called the GX80, so just bear that in mind. So the GX85 is kind of like a smaller version of the GX8. It has a similar style body, although it is, like I said, smaller, but it does have a lot of the features that some of the other higher-end Panasonic cameras have. It's very feature-rich. Let's take a start though by looking through the physical body of it. So if you've ever held another Panasonic camera before, this will probably look fairly familiar to you. Nothing groundbreaking in the body design, but if it's not broke, don't fix it. It's got a viewfinder in the top left. It is not articulating like on the GX7 or GX8. The LCD screen on the bottom is a tilting LCD screen, so you can tilt it up and down. It doesn't flip out all the way, so it's not fully articulated, but it does give you some range of motion there. You've got the menu dials on the back. We have a number of customizable function buttons spread around the back of the camera, which is something that Panasonic always makes sure that they include. They've got some default functions assigned to them, but you can certainly change them. I always really like how Panasonic makes sure to give us a lot of customizability in the physical buttons on the back of the camera, and that's the same here. We've got two control dials, one on the top and one on the back, your standard mode dial on the top, video button, and so on. Okay, well, we'll start with the sensor. So in the GX85, we have a 16 megapixel sensor. So it's not the 20 megapixel sensor that we see in the GX8. However, 16 megapixels has been the workhorse sensor resolution for most Micro Four Thirds cameras, certainly almost all Panasonic mirrorless cameras to date. It's still a very workable sensor resolution. Now, what is different is that there is no anti-aliasing filter in the GX85. Now, a lot of cameras are starting to do this. This is the first Panasonic camera where this is the case. What this means is the lack of an anti-aliasing filter means that the photos and videos are going to be a little bit sharper. The trade-off there is that it will be a little bit more susceptible to moire and aliasing. So that's that tight pattern you see with maybe a brick building or someone who's got a tight pattern checkered shirt. That's kind of an ugly pattern that pops out. That's called moire. You're gonna have to be a little bit more careful about that in the GX85, but you get a little bit sharper photos and videos, so it's a trade-off. Another new feature is that the shutter now has an electromagnetic drive as opposed to a more traditional mechanical drive. This is to reduce shutter shock. Panasonic claims that this will reduce shutter shock by up to 90%. Now, a new feature that's got me really excited about this camera is the 5-axis in-body image stabilization. The GX8 had 4-axis. It also had something called dual image stabilization, where the in-body image stabilization syncs up with the lens. The GX85 also has that, but it does have standalone in-body 5-axis image stabilization. This is something that Olympus, for example, has been well known for. All of their cameras in the OMD range have this. It's a really nice feature, and it does make its way onto the GX85. So what that means is that it's going to really minimize handshake from handheld shots, whether in photo or video. So in photo, this means that you can shoot at a much lower shutter speed, so you can shoot in much darker conditions because you can let in more light with a longer shutter speed. For video, it's great because, for example, I do a lot of handheld video work, and I love being able to just hold the camera in my hands, not have some fancy rig set up, which takes time and so on. Having a nice little camera that I can shoot handheld with and get good quality, smooth video is a really important feature. So that's really nice to have on the GX85. Now, I mentioned that the image stabilization was very useful for video. That's even more important on the GX85 because it is 4K capable. It can shoot 4K video at up to 30 frames per second. Now, this is something that we're used to seeing on Panasonic cameras now. The last couple of their cameras all have 4K video, so it's not super standout in terms of Panasonic's lineup. However, it's worth noting that most competitors don't have a lot of 4K capable cameras these days. It's still a bit of a rarity, and certainly a bit of a rarity at the price point that you'd be looking at for something like a GX85. So that's really nice to have. It'll also shoot 1080p at 60 frames per second, so you can do slow-mo and full HD. The whole slew of video options that Panasonic is known for. With that 4K video capability, Panasonic has also included in the GX85 their 4K photo and post-focus features, which have been making their way into some of their more recent camera offerings. If you want a bit more of a detailed walkthrough on those features, check out my review of the TZ110. I go into a bit more detail on those features there, but essentially they leverage the 4K video capability of the camera to give you 30 frames per second shooting with 8 megapixel JPEGs. Or the post-focus option allows you to actually get a shot of every single focus point of the camera. So you can take 50 shots or so, and each one will be a different focal point. So if you have a group shot, you want to make sure you get everyone's face in focus, you can have a series of photos, that kind of thing. So one new feature they have added though is called 4K live cropping. This basically simulates what you might do in a video editor at home with your 4K video. It allows you to do that in camera. And so the idea behind this is that a lot of people don't actually shoot 4K video to display it in 4K. They're still going to deliver it in 1080p, but they'll shoot it in 4K so they have that much more resolution, and that way they can crop in on the video if they want. They can crop in and do some pans and zooms and so on across the frame after the fact. It gives you a lot more resolution to be able to do that. Typically, you're going to your video editor to do this. The 4K live cropping feature allows you to do this on the back of the camera and add those zooms and pans in camera. The camera will shoot at 6 frames per second with continual autofocus, or at up to 40 frames per second if you're using the electronic shutter and you have a fixed focus point and exposure setting. They've also added a new picture profile called L Monochrome, which I actually found to be very nice. It looks really nice and smooth. Now this brings me to the one major downside and issue with the GX85, and that is there is no microphone port on the camera. So you can't plug in an external microphone. For photos, that's not really a concern, but for video, it's a bit of a problem, especially with all the video features, the 4K video, the 5-axis image stabilization. You really probably want to be able to plug in a mic. I almost always have at least like a Rode VideoMic Pro plugged on top of my camera if I'm shooting video. What this means is if you're using the GX85 for video, unless you're just going to use the in-camera audio, which is not going to sound great, but for some situations it'll be fine. You'll need to get audio from a different source, whether that's a handheld audio recorder, some other kind of different source if you want to have good quality audio synced with video from the GX85. Now this becomes less of a problem if maybe the GX85 is a B camera. If you have a different camera as your main camera and you want to use this as your quick handheld video camera, that becomes less of a concern. But if it's your main camera and you're shooting a lot of video, not having a microphone port is a bit of a problem. So keep that in mind if that's what you're thinking of getting it for. Okay, so that's the Panasonic GX85. Overall, a very, very good camera. There's not really one groundbreaking feature in it, but it's a small, well-built camera with a ton of features. A lot of features that we see mostly in the higher end cameras do make its way to the GX85. Good picture quality, all at a very competitive price. Makes this one of the best current cameras in the current Panasonic lineup. If you want to find out some more information about the GX85 or test it out, come into one of our stores. We have stores in the Brisbane CBD, the Sydney CBD, Bondi Junction, Chatswood, Miranda, the Melbourne CBD, and a brand new store that has just opened in Cannington, West Australia, which is just outside of Perth. You can also order the GX85 on our website at www.digidirect.com.au. Take care.